This exercise series is going to focus on some of the imbalances that we form around the lower back, the hips, and the knees. It's really common when you do exercises like running, Pilates, or gym work to form imbalances. If you don't specifically focus on working into your imbalance, then oftentimes your body just completes the task that you ask it to do with the strong muscles and neglects the weak ones. This is why just running, or just doing yoga, or just doing Pilates can oftentimes result in imbalances. This program will address some of the most common imbalances we see in the clinic every day, and the exercises will be cued to strengthen the muscles that are weak and release off the muscles that are tight. We're going to work up from the most basic movements, activating the fundamental muscles of the core, into more advanced movements that strengthen up the muscles around the hips and the sides. This will help your muscle balance, strength, and flexibility. The exercise we'll start with today is diaphragmatic breathing. This will help us turn on the core muscles and relax off the shoulders. It's very hard to activate the core muscles if you don't activate the diaphragm first, so try not to skip out on this part if you're looking for the harder exercises. They'll be coming soon enough. Lie down on your back with the feet on the floor, one hand on the belly button and one hand on the chest. Go ahead and take a breath through the nose. We're going to go for 10 breaths here. Try to make the stomach rise and the chest stay still. This means that you'll be activating the diaphragm and relaxing the muscles of the shoulders and the chest. Again, it's very hard to work the glutes properly, the core properly, or avoid overworking the lower back and the shoulders when the diaphragm isn't active. So this is a fundamental step, as well as something that you can do throughout the day to help your posture and muscle balance and improve your strength ability. That's a combination of strength and flexibility that I just made up. So we'll go for 2 more breaths here. Try to make them as big as you can. The next thing is the supine draw-in maneuver. So if you place both hands on the hips with the fingers just inside the hip bones like this, go ahead and take your breath in. And as you breathe out, imagine pulling up and into the body with the belly button. So you're drawing that belly button up, right up into the body, and you should feel some muscles tightening up underneath your hands. So again, on the breath out, right at the end of the breath, we're drawing in, we're tightening, and you're gonna feel some muscles pop up into your hands. Again, we'll do 10 of these. If you're having trouble feeling anything, imagine pulling the genitals up or doing up the zipper on your pants using your belly button. These can both be helpful tips to activate the lower abdominals. As you draw up, try not to clench the stomach muscles, as we're just trying to activate these lower pelvic floor, lower abdominal muscles, rather than the six-pack muscles or the obliques. Really clenching can feel almost like you're trying to force a bowel motion. What you want to be feeling is a gentle pull up and into the body, rather than clenching and pushing out. We'll go 3 more of these. Again, this is just getting the core muscles active. It doesn't feel like much, but it becomes very important when we start to do higher loading exercises like squats, deadlifts, forward bends, that sort of thing. If you don't have these muscles on, the lower back and other muscles that you're more familiar with tend to kick on, and that contributes to imbalance. Squeezing and holding. Awesome. So that's the drawing in. Now we're going to use those muscles to start to tip the hips. So we're going to do the same sequence. We're going to breathe in. As you breathe out, you're going to engage those lumbopelvic muscles, and then you're just going to tip the tailbone up towards the chin like this. So you can use your legs a little bit, but try to use mostly those core muscles. So you're rolled up off the ground and then just roll back down one vertebrae at a time. So again, the breath out, drawing in, rolling up and under, just like that, and back down. If you're getting any cramping in the hamstring here, you can just straighten out the leg, stretch it out, or go back to that drawing in exercise that we just practiced. Until you feel ready to roll the tailbone up off the ground and roll back down one vertebrae at a time. So you're only coming up to about the belly button level here. You don't have to go all the way up to the middle back. And you're trying not to arch the back, but instead tuck the tailbone under and roll up. And again, this is just to get the hips used to doing something that they're not very used to doing. They're used to going the other way, to arching up like this, because most people's lower core muscles are underactive. So we're just preparing it so that it can be used with the higher loaded exercises that we're about to do. Squeezing up and under, and coming back down. So we're going to go one more here. The breath in through the diaphragm, the breathing out, drawing in, rolling up, and back down. Excellent. So now that we've got those muscles around the diaphragm and the pelvic floor active, we're going to start to stretch out some of the muscles around the hips and the sides that can restrict our movement and lead us to move in a way that's overusing our already tight muscles. So we're going to basically stretch everything out so that we can move into an optimal position, and then we're going to do some loaded exercises in that optimal position to solidify it and tell our bodies that, hey, that's where we want to be. So to stretch out the muscles around the hips, what you're going to do is kneel on one leg. I'm going to double up the mat here because it's a wee bit thin. So one knee goes down, one knee goes up at about 90 degrees, and then you take those hips, and just like we did on the ground, you're going to tuck your bum under, drawing up those muscles of the pelvic floor. So you're drawing the pelvic floor up. Imagine taking that bony bit on the front of your hip and you're bringing it up towards your chin. So that bony bit's up towards the chin, and you should feel a stretch down that leg that's on the ground. So we're just going to hold this for a few breaths. So breathe in, again through the diaphragm, trying not to raise the chest and shoulders. So we got 3 more breaths coming through. You should be feeling a stretch down the right leg, possibly down the thigh and into the knee, possibly up in the hip. Anywhere along that chain is good news. So we're going to go one more breath here. Then what I want you to do is stick that hip out to the side. So you're going to lean away from the leg that's down, just directly over to the side, and you should get a bit of a stretch going down the outside of the leg and into the side of the body here. So this is just to add a little bit of stretch to a muscle called the TFL, which is the hip flexor, but it kind of sits on the side of the hip, and it's a little bit harder to hit with a straight-on hip flexor stretch. So we're just tipping to the side. We're going to take 3 breaths here. If you notice, my back foot is tucked up, so it shouldn't be flat on the ground like that. You should try to have it tucked up, and that will just stretch the quad a little bit more because that back leg is popped up. Okay, so now we've leaned to the side, so we're going to do the other side for about 5 breaths. I'm going to really make this mat nice and thick so I don't have to lean on concrete. Awesome. So now we've got that other hip down. You can see that my front leg's at 90 degrees, back leg's at 90 degrees, back toe is curled up. You're going to pop the hands around the hips, and you're just going to tuck the tailbone under, bringing that front bony bit up to the chin. And breathe. So you should feel a big old stretch going down the front of that leg. If you don't, try to regress back to that supine pelvic tilt that we did just before and get really good at moving that front bony bit of the hip straight up towards your chin, because that's really what brings on the stretch. You don't need to lean forwards like this. A lot of people do this, but what that'll do is it'll actually put your back into more of an extended position, which again, most people are already in and they're already weak through this front part. So what you want to try to do is just use the front part to tuck up, and then that way the knee, the hip, and the shoulder should be in a straight vertical line. So you're just hanging here. Again, breathing through the diaphragm. And when you're ready, hip out to the side. So you're popping that hip out getting a good stretch down the outside of that leg, and continue the breath. And if you're feeling like you've got a good stretch and you've got good control of the hips here, you can take this outside hand and reach it up and over to the side like this. Feel free to try this on the other side as well. You can pause the video. Take as much time as you need with these stretches. Really, the more you do, the better, but at least 3 to 5 breaths in each position is a good place to start. We can also do this stretch in standing if you do it throughout the day, or if your knee is hurting when you kneel it on the ground, you can stand up like this in a stagger stance position, and same thing applies. You're just tucking the hip up, you'll get a good stretch through the front of the hip, and then you hip out to the side, feel a bit of stretch on the side of the hip. So we've stretched out the hips. How we're going to stretch out the back is if we place this top hand up as high as you can, inside hand goes across to touch the wall, inside foot goes across the outside foot, and just push your hip in towards the wall and the shoulders away. So you're trying to make almost like a banana shape with your body. So you're going to go ahead and breathe through the diaphragm here. And again, we're probably just staying here for about 3 to 5 breaths. So you're breathing right into the bottom of the rib cage, feeling a big stretch between the ribs and the hips here. If you're getting the stretch a bit higher in the shoulder, just try to move those feet a little bit closer in towards the wall, and you can bend this elbow, push the body away, and you're trying to bend through the body. So we've got 3 breaths there. Then you're going to take this close hip, rotate it out about a quarter turn like this, and then drop that hip into the wall. You'll feel a slightly different stretch there in the middle of the back of that rotation. So any stretch through the side of the trunk here is what we're looking for. One more breath here, and then we'll rotate to the other side. So again, close hand goes up as high as you can, inside hand goes across to touch the wall, inside foot goes across the outside, and you're pushing the hip in towards the wall and the shoulders away. So you should get a stretch going down the side here, make your body into sort of a banana shape. Breathing in through the diaphragm, then you're going to rotate that hip out about a quarter turn, drop the hip in even further to get a stretch through the back. If you're getting any pain in this top shoulder, you can bring that arm down. You don't need to be really cranked up on the wall. It's just to help to push you out to get a stretch on the side of the back. So breathing in, stretching out these muscles here. These are very commonly tight muscles in between the ribs and the hips, and what they can do is they can compress and they can make the hips go forwards. They can also affect things like digestion, your GI system, and also your lung capacity and breathing. So good things to stretch out. So we've got all those things stretched out. Now it's time to start to activate and start to strengthen the glutes, the back, all the other muscles around this area that help with the control of the lower back, the hips, the knees, all those things. So the first one we're going to do isn't very strenuous. It's more of a stretching and more of an activation exercise. Again, it's a good practice to go through because it teaches your body the fundamentals of moving without overusing the muscles it's already strong with. So this exercise is called the roll down. So what you're going to do here is you're going to stagger your stance like this. Feet are about hip width apart, about a step apart, slight bend in the front knee. We're going to roll down the front of the leg here. We're going to bring the chin down, round out the upper back, come all the way down like this, as far down as you can, feeling a stretch in that hamstring. Again, this front knee is not completely locked, it's just a little bit bent. Drop that right hip down to the ground so that the hips are even. All the weight goes on this left heel, and then you're going to push up through the heel to roll yourself up to the top position, finishing with the hips tucking under, just like we did for that kneeling hip stretch. So again, this will take some practice. We're going to do about 8 reps on each side. So we're rolling down the front of this leg, chin goes down, head goes down, coming down the front of the leg, right hip follows down so the hips are nice and even rather than turned up like that. So hips are even. All the weight is on this front leg, on the heel, and then you're going to push the heel into the ground and roll yourself up like this, and you'll feel that in the back of the leg and the hip. And again, this is teaching the body how to use the hamstring and the glute without arching the back like this, because it's very common when we do deadlifts or any sort of motion where we're picking up from the ground to really use the crap out of that back to try to assist the glutes and hamstrings, which are a little bit weaker. This exercise takes the back out of the equation and puts all the emphasis on the glutes and hamstrings, and it's a really good one to do if you often feel tight down the back of the legs, or your glute strength isn't very good, or you have a tight back, because Not only does it stretch the back of the hamstring, but it also tells that glute how to start to fire up without using the back as well. So we're gonna push through that heel, the right hip's down, coming all the way back up. So on these last few reps, I'll show you a couple of things that commonly go wrong. So a lot of times as you push through this front heel, you're sort of roll back onto the back foot, and you'll sort of end up putting all the weight on the back foot as you come up like that. So that's a mistake. This back foot basically wants to be really light. It wants to be like almost like a kickstand that just helps you with a little bit of balance, but it doesn't take any of that weight. So all the weight's on that left heel. And if you feel really unbalanced and uncoordinated here, that's probably a good thing. That means we're starting to work into your imbalance, starting to strengthen up some of your weaker points. So that's a good sign. It means you're doing all the technique cues right, and you're putting your body in a precarious position that it's not used to working from. So we're down here, we're pushing up one more time, rolling up through the leg, just like that to the top. Awesome, so we're gonna switch legs. We're gonna try the other side. So again, we're rolling down, curving the chin down to the chest, rounding the back, bending at the spine, trying to bring that belly button to our thigh. Left foot is staying nice and light, all the weight's on the right heel, and you're just pushing up through that right heel as you keep those hips even and as you keep all the weight on that right side. So you should feel that glute and hamstring fire up. Coming back down, again, we're gonna go for about 8 reps here. Dropping down, pushing that heel into the floor, driving up through the bum, coming up through the top. Let's go again. Another common mistake here is rather than rolling up through the upper back like this, people will lift the chest as they come up in an effort to assist that glute and hamstring. But when you lift up like that, it basically turns on that lower back, which is what we're trying to turn off at the moment. So again, keep your chin down. Imagine ragdolling your upper body so it's completely relaxed, and you're just using that leg to roll yourself back up. Continue rolling through the hips as well until you come to this top position where that front bony bit of the hip is pulled right up towards the chin. So you're gonna finish the movement with the hips. So again, go for about 3 more here. Probably lost count. Left hip goes down, pushing through that heel, rolling back up to the top, and you should start to feel it in the back of this leg coming on pretty strong. Going down again. Again, this exercise isn't super strenuous, but it's starting to challenge things that aren't normally challenged in your traditional exercise, like running or gym work or yoga or Pilates. It's putting your body in a position where it can't use its strong muscles, and it's forced to use those weaker ones that need to be trained in order to make sure that you have balance and good control of each muscle group in the body, which is important for preventing injury as well as improving performance, improving flexibility and strength. So we're here. So that's the roll down. So we've done that on both sides. So that's 8 on each side. And that's probably going to be enough for now to start to activate the glutes and hamstrings, start to stretch out the lower back, the hamstrings, the calves, all those things. So now we'll kick on to one that's slightly more strenuous. So the roll down, pretty easy. Now we're going to move on to something that's going to put quite a bit more load through that single leg, working through the hip. But again, we're going to stay in control of the lower back so that it doesn't kick on too much and sort of ruin the parade for the glutes and hamstrings, which is really what we're trying to train. So this one, you're going to place your fingertips on the wall like this, stand on one leg, about a step away from the wall. And as you come down, you don't want to think about pushing the knee forward. You want to think about sitting back through the hip, coming down as far as you can, and then pushing through the heel to come all the way up to the top position where your shoulder, hip, and ankle are all in line. So we're going to go for 5 of these on each leg. Again, you're pushing the hip back and down. The knee doesn't go forward over the foot. Drive up through the heel, come all the way up to the top to where the shoulder, hip, and knee are all in line. And again, that front bony bit of the pelvis is tucked up so that your glutes squeezed, the front of your abdomen is squeezed as well. So you're drawing up through those pelvic floor muscles that we practiced. So again, we're going to go 3 more, dropping down, driving up through the heel, all the way up to the top. You should feel this basically right in the side of your butt cheek. You're coming down, hips are even to the wall, so make sure that that left hip doesn't swirl back on you. Make sure they're both facing the wall. Drive up through the heel to the top of the movement. And let's go for our last rep here. You're coming down. Try not to arch the back too much at the bottom here, so you're trying to tuck under a little bit. So not so much that you're slouched, but just enough so that your hips and ribs are in line here. So again, you're drawing in through the belly button, driving up through the heel to the top of the movement. So that's the right side done. Let's move over to the left. So standing on the left side here, and you're gonna push down and back through that heel, dropping down like that, trying not to put that knee forward, driving up through the heel, come up to the top of the movement. So you don't need to go too deep here. It goes deep as you feel comfortable, but the deeper you go, the more the back will try to arch. So as long as you're in control of that lower back, then you're fine. So we're going for 3 more reps here. And staying in control of that lower back is about mastering that action of pulling that front bony bit up to the chin, using the drawing in exercise that we practiced at the beginning. So if you need more practice on that, feel free to just skip back and hit up those exercises for some more practice. So you should be feeling this right in the side of the hip, and that's going to get the legs nice and strong. So doing single leg exercises is really, really handy because basically you're training muscles that don't often get hit because you're always on 2 legs, and by doing it with the wall squat, where you specifically focus on pushing the hip back rather than pushing the knee forward, you're not training these overused muscles like the quads, but you're actually starting to push into underused muscles around the hip, which again, we don't use that much because the body is a lot more user-friendly with muscles like the quads and the hamstrings, because we bike and we go on stairs and we're always in a tip forward position. So that's the wall squat. We're gonna do 1 more set of that, 5 on each side. So the same thing applies. This time try to get just a little bit deeper. And again, really try to make sure that that knee isn't going forwards past the toes. It can come forwards a little bit, but try not to have it go past the toe. So foot's nice and straight to the wall, push down through the heel, drive through the heel to come back up to the top. So that's 1. Driving down, that's 2. You should feel this through the hip. Stay nice and tall. 3. So if you're having trouble with that pelvic alignment, again, just think about drawing in the belly button, especially at the bottom of the rep where it's the hardest. Generally during the hardest part of the movement, the body will try to arch the lower back then. So that's when you really want to be thinking about drawing in the pelvis and preventing that lower back from taking over. So again, we're transitioning to the left side, 5 on each side, dropping down, driving up. 1, 2, 3, make sure both hips are pointing directly towards the wall rather than kinked out like that. 3, 4, and last one's 5. So you should feel that going right through the hips there, as well as potentially a little bit through the belly as you try to counteract that pelvic tilt and the lower back coming on. The next exercise will progress things in that we're going to be using the back leg to get a nice stretch through the front of the hip here, which is an area that is often tight, as we discover with that kneeling hip stretch. So we're going to be stretching that out even more, as well as continuing to strengthen this back leg and doing it all without the hands on for balance. So it's going to get a little bit more challenging, but stick with it as we're going to keep progressing from here. What you'll do is pop this back foot up on a chair or a bench or a couch like this. I like to go the foot flat. You can put the toes up like this. So foot flat on there. This goes back here. And what you're going to do is just drop down on this heel, far down as you can. Try to stay tucked up through the pelvis and just drive up through the heel like this. So I'm actually going to put my toe up because this chair is a bit hard. So you're going to drop down as far as you can like this, driving up through the heel. So again, chest stays tall, your hips stay tucked under, you'll get a big stretch going through this back leg, dropping down on the heel. This knee is going to stay out in line with the ankle. So you're coming down like that. I'm going to step back a little bit like that. So you should be about a couple of steps away from the chair, forward enough so that this front knee doesn't go over the foot as you come down. So you'll notice balance gets a little bit shaky, driving up through that heel, coming all the way up to the top with your pelvis tucked under. So we're going to go 2 more reps here. We're going for 5, so 4, and 1 more. So we're coming down nice and slow. Again, you're dropping back through the hip. This knee doesn't go too far forward over the foot. Hips stay tucked under, chest stays tall, driving up. And that's the right side done. So now we're going to pop that left side forward, back foot goes back on the chair or the bench. Staying tucked up through the hips, so you'll notice a big old stretch going down the right side of the hip there. Stay nice and tall, drop down as far as you can. Make sure that that knee stays out over the ankle rather than dropping inside the foot. So coming down, coming back up. Staying nice and tall. Again, the hardest part of the movement, right at the bottom, you'll notice your lower back tends to try to arch and bring you out of the movement like this. So again, making sure to stay tucked under, really activating those abdominals as much as you can. So you're gonna go 2 more. Everything stays nice and straight, stays aligned. I tuck right at the bottom of the movement, right where that lower back wants to kick in, but we're not gonna let it. We're gonna focus on reducing our imbalances, shutting down the lower back, strengthening up the core. And when you tuck the pelvis under like this, it's not exactly shutting off the lower back. The lower back's still doing work, but it's also being assisted by the pelvis here. So it's not that you're not strengthening your lower back, it's just that you're strengthening the front as much as you're strengthening the back, rather than doing like a 90-10 split, like is very common. And you'll see that in the gym with people doing this exercise. They'll arch the back quite a lot. They'll kind of come down like this, push the head back, and then push up. And that's really not helping anyone's movement or dysfunction. So you really want to be focusing on decreasing that imbalance. So that's the split squat. We're gonna do 1 more set of that on each leg. Back leg goes back like this, so we're gonna go left leg back, right leg forward. You're gonna drop down on that right heel, stay nice and tall, driving up through the top. So staying tucked under, coming up, goes down, goes up. We're gonna go 2 more. Nice and slow, knee stays out, driving up through the heel, squeezing through. 1 more. That's it. Other side. So it's really common to have one side that's weaker than the other here, and that's completely fine. Just make a note of it. Try to make the weak side behave like the strong side in terms of alignment and in terms of quality of repetitions. And if you want, you can always do 1 extra set on the weak side to help balance things out. So here, again, keeping tucked under, knee stays out over the ankle, chest stays nice and tall, driving up, and you should be feeling this as a stretch in the back leg, and in the front leg, you might feel the glute, you might feel the hamstring or the quad. It doesn't really matter too much. The whole thing's working, and as long as you're not going way forwards over the foot with that knee, then you're gonna be working everything in a really good proportion. So that's the split squat. That's one of the last exercises we'll do for the hip. We're coming to the very last one now. And again, we've progressed from the wall squat, where we had our hands on the wall, to the split squat, where we had our leg up, stabilizing us a little bit. This exercise is gonna take away all those things for us, and it's just gonna focus on our stability through the core, through the hips, and through all the structures. And this is a really good exercise to use with weight. So if you've got dumbbells at home or a barbell and you've done it before and you feel comfortable with it, chuck that weight on, and that's gonna make things a lot more effective for strengthening up the entire leg, the core, the hip, all that stuff. So what you're gonna do to start is just start with feet together like so, and then you're gonna lunge backwards with 1 leg. And again, we're gonna end up in this position where the hips are tucked under, this knee is directly over the ankle, so it's not dropping in like that, right over the ankle. It's not too far forward over the foot, so it's a little bit like that. And you're just gonna drive up through the heel, come up and bring 1 leg up with you. So bringing this 1 leg up basically just means that you're focusing all on this glute for stability, and bringing this leg up also helps the pelvis come up with you. So we don't wanna finish in that position with the back arched. We wanna finish in that tucked under position with that glute squeezed. So we're going straight back down into a rep on the same side, trying to stay balanced, driving up, and we're going for 8 reps here. And again, you can use dumbbells in your hands for this one. You can use a bar across your back. Basically, the more weight, the better, so that by the end of this 8 reps, you're feeling pretty fatigued. So you feel like you can't do, 2 to 3 more. Having a little bit of weight in your hand can actually help with balance as well, as it'll give you a little bit of load to take there. So we got 2 more reps here. 1 and 2. And again, you can feel this in a variety of places, but the glute, the quad, the hamstring, any of that is fine. If the back foot is hurting because of that stretch that you put on when you put the leg back like that, then just bring it in a little bit closer, or you can stretch out the calf and try again after that. So that's 1 leg done. Now we're on to the other leg. Standing on 1 leg, dropping back. This knee stays over the ankle. Drive up. Going for 7 more here. So you're squeezing the glutes, staying nice and comfy through the core. You should be pretty good with these principles by now. Over the past 2 exercises, we've talked about how to push through the hip and how to keep the pelvis tucked under. So you shouldn't be seeing any of this stuff where the knee's really far forward, the weight's on the ball of the feet, and the hips are kind of tipped forward. So try to avoid that sort of thing. Again, the hardest part of the exercise to avoid those things is going to be the bottom, where you're under the most load. So here is a really good time to make sure that that pelvis is tucked and you're driving through the heels. So we'll go one more here. That's the one. Awesome. Okay. So we're gonna go one more set of that, and that's probably the toughest hip exercise that we'll get up to in this program today. So if there's a time to throw on some weight and kind of give it your all, this is the time. So we'll do 8 more on each side. Starting off on the left, dropping down, stabilizing, tucking, driving through. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And with that top position, it can get a little bit unsteady, but basically try to correct any of those unsteadiness, tremors before you go back down, because the correction of that unsteadiness is actually what's going to be training the glute and training the core. So at the top, rather than just bailing back down when you start to fall, just try to recover the fall, post up on that hip, and then come back down. So you got 4 more. 2. Awesome. So that is the leg stuff done, and that's probably the hardest and most strenuous stuff we'll do for the lower limb. So we've got 2 more exercises today, and that's because the lower back and the hips do not only rely on the muscle balance of the hips, the lower back, the pelvis, all that stuff, but they're also incredibly reliant on the muscle balance in your middle and upper back as well, because if the upper back is really rounded and stiff like this, then the lower back tends to go the opposite way to try to keep us standing up tall. So if you don't release the middle back and get it a little bit straighter and a little bit stronger, the lower back is always going to be put on a disadvantage and having to overwork. So these last two exercises are designed to target that upper and middle back. To release the upper back, we're first going to need a rolled up towel. We're going to place this under the part of the back that's typically rounded into a stiff position, and that's going to help to push it into a straighter position. And again, that's going to make the lower back do less work to curve the opposite way. So that'll help the tendency that we all have to basically overextend that lower back and get quite tight through the muscles that extend it. So take the rolled up towel like so. You're going to roll it up. The thicker, the harder in this case. So you might want to start a little bit smaller and just roll it up into a sausage like that, and then pop it under the shoulder blades. So start with it right between the shoulder blades like this. You can put the hands behind the head like so, and basically just lie back over the towel and try to feel a stretch in the middle of the back where that towel is. If you don't feel a stretch straight away, try to bring the hips up, tuck the bum under like that, just like we did for that pelvic tilt, and then pop the hips back down on the ground so that the ground holds them in place. And then you should get a stretch happening right under where the towel is. Try to get your elbows to the ground. If the elbows don't come to the ground straight away, that's just tightness in the shoulders and the chest, so over time that will come back. So we're just gonna breathe here diaphragmatically. Again, taking 5 breaths. And so now, after we've done the squats, it should feel a little bit easier to breathe because all those breathing muscles have probably warmed up a little bit. Might have gotten a little bit of a sweat on. And now is a great time to use that towel to stretch out the rib cage because everything's already moving a little bit. So we started to feel a stretch there in the rib cage. If you don't feel a stretch and you have trouble tucking the bum under, see if you can bring those knees up towards your chest a little bit. So you can sort of rock back on the towel, bring your knees up like that, and then bring the hands back. And that should get a little bit of a stretch across the back. So now that we've got it in one position, we're gonna take that towel and move it down a little bit. So we're gonna move it down towards the bottom of the rib cage, and this is just gonna stretch a slightly different part of the back. So you don't wanna stretch all in just one part of the back. That way, that part of the back will get really stretchy. The other parts will stay stiff. So we're gonna move the towel around to the bottom of the rib cage. Again, hands go behind the back, tucking the bum under like so, and feeling a stretch right in the bottom of the rib cage, closer to the lower back. Again, we're doing 5 breaths here. Okay, so last and final position for this stretch is going to be up near the neck as well. So we've done the middle of the back, we've done the lower part of that middle back next to the bottom of the rib cage. Now we're going to do up near the neck, which is also a position that really commonly gets stiff, and that's when you get this sort of head forward, sort of hunchback position is when the top of the neck gets stiff. So again, pop the towel right up the top, just above the shoulder blades, right below the curve of the neck. So it goes about here, hands go behind the head, and just use your feet to push you up on the towel a little bit. You might get a couple of clicks and pops, that's fine. And then same thing, tuck the bum under, try to get those elbows to the ground. So it's just using the towel in a different position to the one that we've done already, making sure that the top of the spine near the neck, the middle of the spine near the shoulder blades, and the lower part of the spine near the bottom of the rib cage are all extended. And the lower back, of course, is already pretty extended, so we don't have to worry about that with the towel. So again, we're going to take 3 more deep breaths here. And 1, awesome. You can also roll the knees a little bit side to side like this, and that might give you a little bit more stretch in the back. And basically just get into any position here that you can feel a stretch in. So, you know, whether you're stretching the chest or the hips or the back, it really doesn't matter. It's just a good opportunity to work into any tight stuff that you feel. So this is a really good one to also do right before you go to bed. It'll help get that rounding out that you've built up throughout the day. So now that we've extended the spine so that you can start to get it a little bit straighter, like so, we want to strengthen it into this position. So just like we did with the hips, we freed it up first with the stretches and then we strengthened it. We now want to strengthen the upper back into this position so that it can hold here throughout the day and it doesn't just fall back into that slumped position. So how we're going to do that, we're going to get rid of the towel. So we're going to lie down on the front like this. Make sure you have a little bit of space here. So the forehead's going to go down on the ground like this. Arms are going to go out to the sides. And all you're doing here is you're just squeezing the shoulder blades back and up together 10 times. So 3, 4, you're really focusing on not just moving the hands, but really squeezing the shoulder blades back and together while you keep your glutes squeezed. So you're kind of squeezing your butt to make sure that that lower back doesn't arch to try to help your upper back. So we're just targeting that upper back. We're gonna go 2 more here. 1, 2. Now coming up to a Y position. So making a Y with your arms. Again, forehead stays on the ground and you're pulling the backs of the hands straight up towards the ceiling. 3, 4, 5, 6. You're keeping your glutes squeezed. 9 and 10. Last one is the I position. So this is straight ahead. This gets a little bit harder. So you're pushing up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Awesome. Come back to the T position. So we're going to go 2 more sets of that. No, it's pretty difficult, but what it will do is it will start to strengthen up your upper back so that it basically gets used to staying in that extended position. So again, we're going to go forehead down to the ground. We're going to squeeze the glutes together. We're going to bring the backs of the hands up towards the ceiling in this T position, squeezing the mid-back together, pinching those shoulder blades. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Coming up to a Y position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. And lastly, an I position. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I know it feels like it's all in the shoulders, but that's actually going to work quite a lot to straighten the upper back. And with that, that brings us to the end of the lower back, hip and knee adjustment video. So you can use those stretches again to counteract these imbalances that are really commonly felt, even when you do exercises like Pilates or yoga or gym strengthening or CrossFit. All of those things, your body will tend to use those stronger muscles and neglect the weaker muscles. And if you focus on these exercises here, these will really try to bring up the muscles that are commonly weak for people while stretching out the tight ones. So work on those, make it into part of your weekly routine, once to twice a week. And you can also use these stretches as a warm-up for your other physical activities. Stay tuned for the upper body version of this, which will focus on shoulder mobility, upper back, and neck. See you next time.